With the success of Ousmane Dieng and Hugo Besson being selected in the 2022 NBA draft, the New Zealand Breakers have signed a new next star, Rayan Rupert, who also hopes to hear his name called in the 2023 draft. Today, I'm going to break down Rupert's game for both NBL fans and draft fans alike. Rupert signing in the NBL is something that I really wanted to happen. As you can see here, I was tweeting about it, specifically him joining the Breakers before it happened, so I'm kind of proud of that prediction, even if it was kind of slightly obvious that it might happen. And yeah, so with that being said, let's get into what he's like as a prospect. Rupert is a 6'7" guard/wing player, 18 years old with a wicked 7'3" wingspan, which he officially confirmed with me when I reached out to him. At the moment, he's projected to be a mid to late first rounder, with ESPN having him go off the board at pick 22. Rupert and Dieng both played for CFBB, a 3rd division French basketball team, before joining the New Zealand Breakers, so I thought it'd be interesting to look at them statistically side by side before getting into the film. As we can see here, there's a lot of similarities, especially in terms of their 3-point percentage, even if Dieng was on more volume, but at least their scoring output is pretty similar, and their playmaking, look at the percentages on that assist percentage, practically identical. But where Rupert stands out from Dieng is 39% overall from the field. He's a lot more efficient from within the arc, and you can see it there. And also his steal numbers, 2.5 steals a game and a 4.8 steal percentage. That is crazy, and it's probably the most exciting part of his game. So let's get right into the film of it. With a +8 wingspan, Rupert is disruptive defensively. He's definitely a gambler, but he has an innate ability to pick the ball loose on ball handlers or drivers or anyone who decides to initiate contact with him and create transition opportunities for his team. With all of his length off the ball, he's also a menace at creating defensive events. He does a great job of not making too much contact when poking at drivers off the ball, and has awesome awareness and anticipation when jumping passing lanes, where he's a comfortable transition ball handler. I think the majority of Rupert's early career value is going to be from playing a defensive specialist role, largely as a disruptor who can guard down a position. Rupert has the lateral quickness to move with smaller guards on the perimeter and the length and reactivity to force turnovers and poor pressure decisions. In this last play, you can see how alert he is, and I love his defensive processing, which is especially interesting here in how he responds to the situation after being faked out of position. As I mentioned before, he's a defensive gambler, and because of this, sometimes he makes some costly decisions that take him right out of the play. Rupert, in my opinion, has a decent amount of variance in his range of outcomes, but in the simplest of those outcomes, he'd be slotted as a 3-and-D role player. I imagine this is going to be the majority of his role with the Breakers while he finds his footing playing at higher levels. He currently shoots just 25.2% from deep on 4.4 attempts per game, but the film sparks optimism for his shooting upside to be more exciting than the numbers suggest. He does a great job of relocating, plus moving into space and shooting windows on the wing and in the corners. With this, he's flashed some movement shooting, which will be really important to his role going forward, mostly from the mid-range, but at this stage in his development, that's a promising sign. At the end of the day, 25% isn't going to cut it from deep, and he will need to improve in this area, but the foundation as a shooting prospect is there. Alright, Rupert's off the dribble game is where he gets truly fascinating conversationally when projecting his upside. Just an added touch to having faith in his shooting development, for someone of his percentages, he has moments where his off the dribble shooting looks real, and his confidence in doing so soared near the end of the season, playing in the Adidas Next Generation tournament. However, for Breakers fans, don't expect Rupert to be much of a shot creator. No more than what Dieng was at least, and he was able to create more space with his stride lengths. This is the issue with Rupert. He struggles to create separation with his handle. Rupert was forced into shooting more late clock self-created looks than he should have been. That's largely the result of the team lacking in advantage creators and tossing him the ball with less than 5 seconds on the clock several times in the span of a game. A lot of the time, he dribbles back and forth, lacking any sort of change of pace, shiftiness, or athletic burst that would allow him to create a look, and even in his makes this has been evident. Maybe with the breakers, we'll learn that this developmental situation progressed his ability to make the shots without necessarily being able to create them. That then opens a philosophical scouting debate when projecting of valuing a prospect who creates space and doesn't convert versus one who hits the shots but doesn't create separation. Even though he shot 45% from 2, Rupert is a passable interior scoring prospect in my opinion when considering his situation. Unlike his perimeter creation, he does a solid job of using pacing and footwork to create looks at the rim. He's much more effective going downhill with his dribble rather than attempting to go outwards to find scoring opportunities. As a straight line driver, he uses his length to extend to the basket and uses varying angles on the drive in doing so. He's also a fluid athlete, jumping off of 1 or 2 feet, and has smooth footwork using euros and excellent foot placement. I don't think his finishing will be a large part of his game, but I doubt that is going to be an issue going forward. Rupert makes great decisions as a cutter, which in combination with his defensive rotations and relocating as a shooter shows that he overall processes the flow of the game pretty well, which is awesome for projecting him as a high feel wing connector piece in the league. Also, he's got a developing floater, which is pretty encouraging when assessing his touch around the basket. Being a threat going downhill opens up what he can do as a pick and roll ball handler, where he's shown some promise, especially hitting a fading screener. I'd love to see the breakers cautiously explore Rupert's pick and roll game, similar to how they handled Dieng. I don't think he has the live dribble creativity of Dieng or the appeal of pulling off those wacky passes at his height, being a few inches shorter, but just possessing these ancillary skills is important in wings and off guards within my draft philosophy. In a general sense, he's a positionally positive passer, maybe hinting at fitting the connector archetype pretty well. He plays with a downhill patience and timing as a decision maker when he gets paint touches, which would benefit from him becoming more of a threat at the rim by upping his finishing numbers. Those two areas are quite intertwined in his long-term development. The very last thing I'll point out is Rupert's 1-2 dribble mid-range pull-up, which he has good touch on, another long-range shooting upside indicator. I don't know if he has the deceleration, creation tools, or positional height advantage to go to this often in the NBA, but it could be a viable method in the NBL. The way I can see this translating long-term in the NBA is if he incorporates it into his pick-and-roll scoring arsenal, but that would require him having the ball handling equity to be worthwhile as a pick-and-roll handler at that level, which is conditional on hitting upper-end developmental outcomes. Overall, Rupert is an energetic prospect with a great foundation to build upon during his time in New Zealand and over the first few years of his career. I imagine there will be an adjustment period for him, as the NBL is a good few tiers above the NM1. With Modi taking over as the head coach and the Breakers potentially and hopefully having a better season, Rupert might not get the freedom that Dieng experienced in the second half of the year and could play a more refined role. New Zealand struggled big time on the defensive end this past season, and Rupert, in whatever minutes he's given, should address those deficiencies immediately. I personally like Rupert a little bit more than I did Dieng upon signing with the Breakers, but Dieng's highs and lows were more extreme than what Rupert's are. If you want more NBL and draft content, drop a follow on my Twitter or Instagram at QKHoops.